Have you ever felt like everyone around you just gets things faster? You sit there, processing, while the rest of the room is already moving on. Society usually measures how smart we are by a narrow set of metrics: perfect test scores, a loud sense of confidence, and a rigid daily schedule. But intelligence often operates through unconscious behavioral patterns, specific habits of processing reality that look like flaws to an outside observer. Even history's most celebrated minds rarely fit the standard mold of a high achiever. Albert Einstein's brilliance was famously messy, driven by a quiet observation rather than a fast-paced routine. To see how that type of mind actually works, we have to look past the grades. We need to map the pipeline of intelligence, how a brain gathers data, organizes that information, and eventually acts on it. The first phase is the input. High IQ brains don't just observe their surroundings, they absorb the environment in high definition. This diagram represents a brain in a normal environment. While most filter out background noise, a sensitive brain takes in hundreds of tiny details: ticking clocks, light variations, distant conversations. This heightened sensory processing forces the mind to manage a massive influx of data. This high-volume intake turns the brain into a natural pattern hunter, spotting connections others miss. It retains a massive library of random details, from documentary facts to specific words said years ago. All this data processing changes how the brain perceives rewards. The dopamine system burns through simple tasks quickly, leading to a constant craving for complex novelty. This explains why some people jump between unrelated topics, like philosophy and coding, to grow mental models. Because surface-level answers don't satisfy this need for complexity, these individuals relentlessly question everything, searching for the underlying mechanics of systems others simply accept. What appears to be a stuttered attention span or oversensitivity is the result of a mind simply processing more nodes of information than its peers. Once the data is in, the brain moves to the processing phase, where it must organize the chaotic information it just gathered. This requires immense bandwidth. It's the reason many people crave silence or find themselves most productive late at night. When external distractions fade, the brain finally has the space to categorize data and generate insights. This visual represents metacognition, the ability to think about your own thinking. Instead of following a simple path, the mind branches out, imagining a dozen different outcomes and identifying potential flaws in a strategy several moves ahead. To navigate these complex decision trees, many people talk to themselves. Verbalizing thoughts actually helps the brain process information faster, acting as a literal mechanism for coaching oneself through difficult reasoning. This neural depth also applies to emotions. Feeling things intensely and empathizing deeply are natural extensions of a brain processing information at a high level. Chronic overthinking and deep sensitivity function as internal simulations, allowing the mind to predict and analyze reality before it even happens. Finally, the pipeline reaches the execution phase. When it's time to output action, the results often look very different from typical ideas of success. This graph shows active procrastination. The brain refuses busy work until a deadline forces full focus, spiking productivity. Overlaying a sine wave shows it's about energy management. They align hard work with natural cognitive rhythms, protecting mental peaks over rigid schedules. When it comes to communication, they tend to talk less, editing thoughts internally before speaking. They often use emotional intelligence to simplify complex ideas, making conversations easier to follow. This honesty also leads to constant self-doubt. Because they understand the Dunning-Kruger effect, they are acutely aware of how much they still have to learn, often leading them to question their abilities more than less informed people do. Delayed action and self-doubt emerge from a mind that understands its own limits and waits for the precise moment of maximum focus. These patterns, the overthinking, the procrastination, and the extreme sensitivity, map the specific ways a brain inputs, organizes, and acts upon the world. Adaptability and deep awareness provide a more accurate measure of intelligence than speed or accolades. Mapping these cognitive habits is an exercise in metacognition. By analyzing how your mind operates, you are utilizing the same internal process that allows the most effective thinkers to solve complex problems. If people criticize you for being too quiet, too sensitive, or too lost in your own head, you can simply smile. Understanding these mechanics allows you to work with your mind rather than against it. That self-awareness is the foundation of how intelligence actually works.